Yeah, I mean, I think, once again, I think obviously like the vast majority of being in those groups is good. But I think the weird thing is, with only a few exceptions, mainly when I think of it like FaZe and Sidemen, most of the time those like group things, they never last forever. And I think, Sidemen is probably the strongest example of one that's lasted, because it's always just been that core group of 7 people. FaZe is a pretty good example, but obviously they're much, much bigger. People come, people go, and they're kind of like held together as like a giant mass with a few like core people behind it. But I think when you look at stuff like Team 10, I think that's an example of one that went catastrophically wrong. Then there's ones like, like Click, our group, where it was just like, everyone kind of did it for a year and was like, I think really vibed it the first 6 months. And then last 6 months were kind of like, like it's maybe not as great. And then tried to keep it going 6 months, probably longer than it should have. And then that was when it was like, okay, this is like maybe just not the vibe that everyone's wanting anymore.
So why is that? Because I think there's a lot of, while so much of what happens in influencer houses plays out publicly online, I think there's a whole element to it, which are the challenges that usually people don't get to see. And so what do you think, like, let's talk through some of the tough points around this.
I mean, like, I think we've really gone, I think, I'm not going to use even Click as an example, because I think we've done like basically 2 episodes going into the real nitty gritty of that. But I think if I was just going to top line it, it's the same reason that a lot of people will move into a share house with one of their best friends because they really want to live with them. And that a lot of the time, it doesn't always go well, like it just doesn't always go fantastically. I think that realistically, being a YouTuber a lot of the time means you probably got a very strong personality, or I don't know, I would just say generally speaking, YouTubers I know, for whatever reason, whether or not it's like a sense of entitlement that comes around having an audience validate you or whatever it is, I just think that generally speaking, YouTubers tend to be very, very kind of like hard-headed and not as compromise happy as I think most people are. And whether or not
I think, like, to put it shortly, you're putting a lot of very big personalities that are used to working by themselves and that oftentimes have big egos. It's not a bad thing. It's oftentimes quite necessary for the job. In a house together.
Yeah, like I'd say I'm someone who
illuminating the strengths and weaknesses of everyone.
Yeah, and I think I'm someone who, like, I try not to really have like a, I feel like the part I play in a lot of my videos and the part I played definitely in like a lot of Click stuff was like, oh, Elliot's got an ego. But I feel like generally, like, I try not to actually have that be something that I genuinely am. But I think that I definitely do still have one. I think that everyone who was in the Click House had one. I think that everyone, like pretty much every YouTuber in the office building, and to a degree, everyone I know has like a little bit of like a hard-headedness in them that comes from, it just seems to be a trait that I think most YouTubers end up developing, at least to some degree. Doesn't mean you're still not a nice guy.
I think it's inevitable.
But
I think it's inevitable.
Yeah,
as
but
a
what it
big
means
creator,
when you're in a house, just when you're a big creator, you've got an audience telling you that you're great all the time, and a whole bunch of different reasons. It just comes off that. It just happens to happen that way. But I think that ultimately where that really then can create problems when you have these groups happen is, I mean, once again, everything is so interconnected. You think about the problems that arise in a normal like share house that you might start with your friends. At the start, everything's great. Then it's like, hey, Michael, mate, you left that yogurt cup out again for the 7th time this week. Can you move it? And then Michael goes into his room. He's like, freaking John always getting pissed at me about leaving my yogurt cups out. Like, it's not even that big a deal. He could just grab it and chuck it in the bin. And then, like someone else is like, oh, like, hey guys, like there's all this like rotten food lying around. Can we clean that up? And someone's like, oh my God, like this person's so like, got their finger up their butt where they just want everything to be perfectly clean all the time. It's ridiculous. And I just think that a lot of the time, obviously conflicts happen. And I think that the more hard-headed you are, probably the less easy and willing it sometimes is to find compromises there. But I also then think in those YouTuber entertainment houses, you have the added element of you're mixing business on top of those existing issues. So,
totally.
whether or not that's issues that come around like a collaborative community channel and, you know, I want to make this video, I don't want to make this video. Well, I know how to do content and you don't. And then all that kind of stuff, whether it's talking about how to like what people are contributing to that channel, or whether it just comes about like, hey dude, you know, like, can you help me with this video today? No, sorry, I'm busy. And like, long story short, you're just mixing more and more potential danger elements in those groups, I think, with also a bunch of personalities that are, to a degree, a bit more susceptible to turning those areas into like hot points. And
100%. And then I think there's a bunch of logistical issues as well. And each of these...
The management speaking, ladies and gentlemen.
But there are a bunch of like, you know, and this is run differently from group to group, but there are major issues around who's paying for all of this. Because let me tell you, these houses are expensive with a capital E. Expensive.
I remember when we were looking at our balance sheet for the first year we did the Click House, and it was like the entire company, like all the other employees, office space, utilities, everything else that the company was like doing was like this, and then it was like this house that just had a bunch of YouTubers in it making one video a week for a group channel was like that, and it was like, oh my god, man, like money.
It's a lot. It's a lot of money. And let me like point out some of the issues around it. Okay, yes, you're paying for rent. Are you paying for each person's individual food? Probably not a good idea because people eat all different things. Okay, the house is starting to get really messy. This is an issue for 3 people in the house and the other 3 people don't care, living in a pigsty. Who's paying for the cleaners? Who's doing that? Like, is everyone splitting that equally? Okay, what if you know that someone has 10 million subscribers versus someone has 500,000 subscribers? Is the person that has 10 million subscribers going to pay a little bit more? But therefore, if you're starting to make money out of the channel, does the person with 10 million subscribers also get paid out more or less? Or is it like everyone's showing up and putting in the same time, therefore everyone should get paid the same amount? I don't think so. That's just not how it works.
If someone misses a shoot, do they not get a cut from that shoot? If someone, you know, like, long story short, I think
there's a lot of issues. No, I don't mind talking about it. I want to like, I think it's really important to drill into that.
I 100% think there's a lot of issues. I think though that I feel like I was just going to direct people to go and watch the other episodes we've done where I think we delve quite deeply into the topic of issues like this, where they arise, how you can resolve them, how you can't resolve them, and where things can just inevitably like go really bad.